Australia, and you and me are going to get it on.
The whole thing behind the Super League was pay television.
It will stand as the darkest day in 100 years of Australian Rugby League. The Super League Challenge tested the backbone of the game, the rugby league clubs.
When you had the two powerhouses in Murdoch and Packer wanting this game, you knew you got a good product.
Rugby league became a victim of its own success. Success built on community pride, expansion and sponsorship.
It's the first time a donor has provided incentive prize money.
Television and world-class marketing.
You're simply the best.
The code was simply the best. But while success threatened the rugby league clubs, it could never destroy their spirit.
It's a fast, thrilling game from the kick-off.
January the 8th, 2008. The Newtown Club celebrates its 100th birthday. The Jets claim to be the first Australian rugby league club, disputed for a century.
Newtown Rugby League Football Club was born on the 8th of January. That makes it the first club. And the facts are, the minute book clearly state that.
100 years later, there's still a barney about which club was formed first. The newspapers all tell us that Glebe was first, but Newtown insists that their own minutes record that they were first. So there's an ongoing battle that's still there.
The first season kicked off with 9 foundation clubs. Newtown, Glebe, North Sydney, South Sydney, Cumberland, Balmain, Eastern Suburbs, Western Suburbs, and the somewhat distant Newcastle Club.
Newcastle people are very proud of the fact that we were there in 1908 and 1909, travelling down to Sydney by steam train or bullock cart, whatever you want, to be a part of that first competition ever.
The first rugby league clubs were the building blocks of the code, generating pride in community. And it wasn't always about the footy. February 2008. The rugby league skiffs sail once more on Sydney Harbour.
There was that link there between sailing and rugby league, where these guys used to play football on the Saturday and they'd sail on the Sunday.
Skiff racing is a tradition that goes back to the foundation of the game.
The football fraternity in which Delhi Messenger mingled and mixed would sort of automatically go across to racing boats on Sydney Harbour.
On the water, clubs would race for the Gilton and Sailing Trophy. On the field, it was all about the premiership prize, the JJ Gilton and Shield. But with Australian Rugby League just a year old, the decider was anything but a fair fight.
The league decided they'd play matches between the Kangaroos and Wallabies. But rather than extend the season, they put the grand final of Balmain between South Sydney on the undercard, which really upset the Balmain officials.
Balmain organised a boycott, promptly ignored by their opponents, South Sydney.
They both made the gentleman's agreement they wouldn't turn up to the grand final. South Sydney turned up, kicked off, and they claimed the victory in 1909. And from that year onwards, we became rivals and bloody beauties.
Rivalry and club loyalty was forged early, helped out by the residency rule.
The players had to be bona fide residents of the area in which they played.
An exception to this rule was the league's only amateur club. Sydney University still sports a team today. From 1920, the students spent 18 years in the big league.
They only had students playing. There was this big turnover of players, so they struggled quite a bit.
In 1926, the club stunned the league, making it all the way to the premiership decider against South Sydney. 2 world wars provided more challenges. Unlike other sports, the league refused to suspend competition.
During both wars, Rugby League kept playing with its club competition to provide entertainment and relief to the people at home.
Clubs shared the limelight with men in uniform.
As well as club matches during World War II, the league put on games between the military and different units with that many rugby league players tied up in different areas of the war effort that they could put on matches during the week, and they helped raise funds for the war.
And the Rugby League City versus Country match to benefit patriotic funds is a financial success.
Meanwhile, more teams had joined the competition. St George in 1921, Canterbury Bankstown in 1935, and at war's end, Parramatta and Manly Warringah. The post-war years heralded a golden era, built on the spoils of the one-armed bandit.
Poker machines became the ultimate funder of a football team. Poker machines created the opportunity of a club to go out and buy a player.
The New South Wales government licensed poker machines to leagues clubs in 1957. The first to collect, St George.
They got a jump on all of the others, and they were able to get some pretty good players up front before anybody else could get moving.
And would have made players feel very confident in coming to us from other clubs. And the boys, the directors, weren't shy in raiding other players. You know, they wanted Raper and they took him from Newtown.
The Dragons were the glamour club. Audiences flocked to see highlights of 11 straight premierships on big screens around the nation.
The only time I'd see any coverage of rugby league would be at the Saturday afternoon matinee, where they'd parcel something up on a piece of film and call it the Cine Sound Newsreel Review or something. That was your supply of rugby league for the week.
Cigarette companies saw rugby league newsreels as advertising gold.
Tobacco sponsorship gave sport, and especially the sport of rugby league, the opportunity to do things it could never have done.
It's the first time a donor has provided incentive prize money, part of Will's contribution to the code. $40,000 in incentive payments already having been allocated for the 1974 season.
The sponsorship of tobacco companies brought to the league the Rothmans Medal for the award for the best player, the Wills Cup pre-season competition. Also, the main premiership itself became known as the Winfield Cup in the 1980s.
16 teams to cheer. This will be our finish here. As we give it their all for the greatest prize.
The Winfield Cup. This year, it's even bigger.
That term was built for rugby league, win and field. You know, that's where you win grand finals out on that paddock. So it was a natural advertising fit.
Well, the tobacco companies saw the television and rugby league as a perfect fit and a way for them to get their product in the face of the consumers through television.
Until the arrival of cigarette money, the league had viewed television with caution.
There was a worry that people staying at home to watch the game and not go to matches was denying the league gate money.
Suddenly, because of tobacco sponsorship, TV rights became so valuable and the league signed exclusive TV deals. I mean, back in the 60s, there were grand finals televised by all the networks. There was no such thing as exclusivity. Can you believe that?
Television had the effect of really promoting the game and getting it around to a lot of people that would normally not have got to see it.
I think it's made for TV. I really do. I think it's a sport that embraces TV in every one of its forms.
Likers of the other codes all say that rugby league's the best television game, and it is, because the action's always centred around the ruck, and so that it fans out from there. You can always see what's going on. You don't particularly need an overview to understand what's happening, because the way the game moves, television can track it very well.
By the mid-1970s, rugby league clubs had never had it so good. On top of poker machine money, advertising dollars poured in, fuelled by the game's tobacco-funded television coverage. Soon, other companies were taking up the habit.
These are the first club to seek the approval of the league in respect to having company identification.
Nick Politis, who was the founder and owner of City Ford, realised the importance of exposure, and he wanted to go on a jumper.
The league were very reluctant and, a little bit concerned about putting brand names on jerseys.
There's certainly no company taking over any team. That's not possible under league rules.
Kevin Humphreys, who was the head of the league at the time, made that decision and said, let's give it a go, let's go with it.
The clubs are certainly not going to lose their identification. I'm quite sure that the Eastern Suburbs supporters still regard Eastern Suburbs as the Roosters.
Clubs took their image seriously. The Newtown Blue Bags relaunched as the Jets, the Canterbury Berries canned by the Bulldogs, and match day was not complete without cheerleaders.
Manly's go-go dancers give a gay welcome to the Sea Eagles.
I think cheerleading is a tradition as much as, you know, kicking off or kicking goals is.
Initially, I think cheerleaders looked like baton twirlers and march past, and then eventually it just became sexier and slinkier as the years went on, and the girls became, you know, skinnier and sexier and more confident.
The whole schoolgirl costume at the 82 grand final was a perfect demonstration of where cheerleading was at that time. It had nothing to do with the game. It had nothing to do with rugby league. It was just a way to dress the girls up and make them look as sexy as possible. So it's definitely come a long way since then.
Cheerleaders, I love it. You know, if you can give me something apart from a game of rugby league on the same menu to entertain me for that entire time that I'm there, then I'm all for it.
People have always gone to the football and they've had the pie and, you know, the beer, and they've watched the cheerleaders, and it's just what you expect to do when you go to the football.
Meanwhile, the game got bigger.
For Cronulla, it's their first. But what an effort by the Sharks. They've come to the grand final the hard way, but they're ready.
New teams introduced in 1967, the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks and the Penrith Panthers. A financial powerhouse today, the club's first decade was a struggle.
It was very hard playing for Penrith. When they won a game, they celebrated as though it was a grand final, and that sort of worried me a bit.
Penrith, yeah. They called on the chocolate soldiers. I think they were inferring that they melted under pressure, and they got some horrible hidings. I remember one day, I think Manly beat them by about 70. I wish I hadn't have been there, but I was.
I think why they got called chocolate soldiers, I think it was because of the colour of the Guernseys they'd had. There were some shocking colours put up by them.
Desperate to turn things around, the Panthers signed Great Britain international Mike Stevenson in 1974.
Picked up by Stevenson. Stevenson makes the break. He's going in to score, and a good try.
We had a big problem in as much that a lot of the Sydney press, they'd often say, Penrith? I don't go that far for my holidays. And I think I brought a little bit more professionalism to them, and in some small way helped them on the steps towards their future.
I didn't move to Penrith until I was 13, and I'd played a fair bit of footy before that, and Penrith wore brown and white, so they were pretty ugly, and they never won many games. So. But, you know, it wasn't until they started to get, you know, in the semi-finals in the mid-90s, and Greg Alexander and blokes like that started to come through, where actually this town started to get behind them a little bit, and they got a following.
Penrith claim their first ever title, the Winfield Cup of 1991.
When Roy Simmons lifted that championship trophy, you know, I was very, very pleased.
By the early 1980s, the game was on a roll. Tobacco and television brought unprecedented wealth. But in the contest between money and tradition, there had to be a loser.
He's busted the first line, and the second, and the third, and he's in for solo, and it's a...
In 1981, the Newtown Jets reached the grand final.
They made the grand final against Parramatta, a fairy tale. And for a little while looked like they were going to win it. Of course, little do we know then that it was really the swan song of Newtown, wasn't it?
Less than 2 years later, they were gone. The final winter exposed Foundation Club Newtown's battle for survival.
This is bullshit.
I'll let him know I trained at Amara Group.
I wouldn't do it that way.
Well, you're not the coach, are you? They don't play for you.
No, they play for Newtown, and we're a business.
We're fucking amateur hour, and you're the MC. These blokes have bled for this club you call a business. They deserve better.
Just for an inner-city club that was always sort of a battling club, to survive and compete with the others, it's a great sadness to see it go, but it was probably just inevitable in the way that the whole game moved in the next sort of 5-10 years.
The demise of Newtown was, in many cases, a tragedy for the game at that time. The team was drawing very small crowds. The Newtown Leagues Club was struggling as a leagues club.
And straight away I could tell that there was financial difficulties with cash. They had assets, but no cash.
It really was the end of a traditional foundation club as we saw demographically Sydney change.
So Newtown was left holding nothing.
In 1982, rugby league took its biggest gamble yet. For the first time since 1909, it looked beyond Sydney to Wollongong's Illawarra Steelers and Canberra's Raiders.
I felt that we had to start to spread our wings, and Canberra was one example, Illawarra another, then Newcastle, Brisbane and so on. But Canberra was in the heart of a very big rugby league area.
They had the administrative background, they had the players, they had the financial support to justify having a team.
But Canberra couldn't win a trick. They needed to find a new breed of player.
They were able to attract a better quality of player once they got Mal Meninga. That was the player.
Number 3, Mal Meninga.
You had to make a decision. I didn't want to live in Sydney. I didn't really have an offer from Illawarra, so Canberra was the only option.
Mal and I left together in '85 to go to Canberra. I think there was, 40 or 50 guys from Brisbane, and that badly affected the Brisbane competition.
The Raiders did a lot of damage to the local Brisbane competition because they virtually took a South team, Mal Meninga, Peter Jackson, Gary Belcher went down there.
To distribute, there's a try to O'Sullivan.
The Raiders' raid didn't stop at players alone.
They also took down Wayne Bennett. That may have been the catalyst for really pushing for a Brisbane side in the Sydney competitions.
Meninga, blindside with Belcher. Belcher scores!
Gary was there and Mel was there, and as I said, a whole lot of Queenslanders. So it was just a natural fit for me.
Canberra's turnaround was astonishing. A premiership win after only 8 years in the competition.
I always had self-belief, always believed we could win the game, but it's just a good testament for hanging in there and believing in what you're doing, and in the end you prevail.
Across the border, Queensland's rugby league faced a new battle to hold on to its trump card, the King.
I should have been playing in the Sydney Rugby League competition earlier. Gene Miles and I both signed contracts, 3-year contracts to play with Manly. We took those back to the Queensland Rugby League, and there was a bit of a debacle with how the contract was put forward, and they denied us opportunity to go back and get the contract altered by the Manly club.
The job of pushing Brisbane into the big league fell to former international John Rebo.
We had to go through a fair bit of heartache in the early days because we were sort of tearing the hearts out of other clubs in Brisbane. So they had to make some huge sacrifices for the game to go forward. So they elected to let the Broncos come in.
Well, he's lost it. This has got to be a try under the post. It crashed over. Another mistake from Dale Shearer. And the Broncos have gone over for their first try at Lake Parker Rush.
With the Broncos up and running, they staged a coup, luring coach Wayne Bennett back across the border.
It was the second hardest decision I ever made in my life, to come back. I was confident enough I could get the job done for them as well.
And he did.
And the Broncos, they can celebrate. They've won the Whitfield Cup for the first time.
Brisbane's first premiership took rugby league to new heights. The game was on fire, sparked by a memorable advertising campaign.
You're simply the best.
John Quayle introduced quite a number of innovations to the game, but I think his outstanding contribution to the game was the Tina Turner commercial.
It took the league to a new dimension. It took to the audience of the woman and the young person.
I felt that the song always went with the guys because there's so much action on the field and so much excitement, and it sort of gives you that winning feeling. It sort of motivates,
It was the end result which was the real eye-opener, to see the quality, the class of that ad, and to see that women were starting to come into footy. And surprise, surprise, by the end of that season, I think women were taking up 52% of each rugby league crowd.
You just want to sing it and you just want to be a part of it, and it draws you in. It's a real contagious effect that it has.
One of the greatest campaigns in sport, not only in Australia but across the world.
The campaign propelled the game into a new era of national and international expansion.
1995 will see the rugby league really take off, with the addition of the Western Reds from Perth, the North Queensland Cowboys, the South Queensland Crushers and the Auckland Warriors.
Rugby league had never been better, but few knew of the firestorm that was about to be unleashed.
We got a phone call at about 11 o'clock at night that this Super League was going on, that we had to get in a taxi and come in now and sign, otherwise we're going to miss the boat.
April Fool's Day, 1995, and all hell broke loose.
It was a takeover by one of the wealthiest blokes in the world, Rupert Murdoch, News Corporation. It was no question about it whatsoever. The great thing about Super League was you knew the game of rugby league was special, because when you had the two powerhouses in Murdoch and Packer wanting this game, you knew you got a good product.
The race was on to sign players before Super League could snare them.
That day there were players lined up in the corridors of the New South Wales Leagues Club signing contracts and so on. I've never seen anything like it before.
And less than an hour ago, News Limited gathered its Super League staff.
I was talking to John Reeb, obviously, and Ken Cowley, all those influential people that are involved with Super League and the other side as well. And they laid all the cards out on the table, and for me, I chose that way. And one of the reasons why I chose that is because it enabled Canberra to survive.
I think I would have been one of the guys to jump ship. I don't think the Australian Rugby League was doing the right thing by the players. I don't think the players were getting their fair share of what they should have been.
The whole thing behind the Super League was pay television. There's no question about that. I mean, pay television was just coming into Australia, and naturally they needed sport to get customers.
We had two media empires fighting for the right of this game, which we should have stopped immediately.
We all loved rugby league. We thought where it was going wasn't the correct way, so we wanted to take it another way.
There were a lot of broken friendships and a lot of heartache, and a lot of things happened that should never happen.
There were lies, deceitful people everywhere, massive amounts of money being splurged, all the money that the ARL had ever saved, the New South Wales Rugby, thrown out the window.
All I was personally thinking about at the time was the incredible waste of money, the incredible time, the incredible split of the fabrics of the game that were never ever going to come back.
The worst thing that happened, of course, was the damage it did to the game of rugby league.
Late this afternoon, the full bench handed down its decision. It's prevented Super League from starting their competition.
The ARL had won the first round of a federal court battle.
The clubs will come back. I don't think there's any doubt about that. If they didn't, they'd be letting a lot of people down.
But for rebel players, it wasn't a done deal.
The rebels boycotted the meeting. They were across the road in the federal court, where Super League was mounting its bid for survival.
The very future of rugby league came down to Super League's appeal.
For 4 months, Super League and ARL's chiefs have waited for the court's decision.
The full bench delivered a crushing blow to the ARL. It was game on for Super League.
Ken Arthurson and John Quayle were simply stunned. Super League staff overjoyed.
It was sheer pressure on so many occasions, especially during our appearances in court. It was a terribly tough time.
See how great your game can be. Super League.
1997 was the year of the Great Divide. The ARL and Super League went head-to-head.
No one was prepared to give up. The best interest of the corporation came first. The game wasn't considered in any way.
Super League will breathe new life into football.
You've forgotten the pride in our history. It's a shame that you don't understand, Mr. Murdoch.
but there's no way you're buying our game.
Clubs had to choose between two competitions.
It had gone too far. And we couldn't just make a phone call and said, let's get together here, because both parties were too far apart.
In what became known as the Super League War, it was the blue-collar town of Newcastle that would become the battleground.
Newcastle was the front line of the Super League War, where it was the only place they had rival teams competing in rival competitions.
I think News Limited believe, and also the ARL believe, that whoever got Newcastle were going to go a long, long way to winning the war.
If Newcastle had gone to Super League would have won right there and then. It would have been the last throw of the dice.
I've never come across a town that's more passionate about the rugby league than Newcastle.
Newcastle was rugby league gold. The city's team, the Knights. Its players squarely in the sights of News Limited Super League.
I spoke to News Limited first, and I went straight across to Phillip Street and spoke to the ARL. By the end of that day, I knew where I wanted to go to.
Paul was signed first because we felt that Paul was the leader. Paul was very much a part of what Newcastle was about.
The News Limited boys were absolutely pounding down the door, I mean continuously pounding down the door. I was really determined to make sure that our club got to hear both sides. So we decided to hire a bus from a bloke up the road, threw the boys in, and we drove down the road.
Paul Harrigan became known in the corridors of power at News Limited only as the bus driver. They despised him from that day on.
Now Andrew John. Fights a little hole himself. He's great. He reaches out. That's a try to Andrew John.
Talk to one side, and we decided, right, we're going to stay with this side. Then you talk to the other side, and that'd sound, so enticing. And getting phone calls at 3 in the morning and stuff.
I'll tell you what made the difference. When Gus Gould finally came down and sat in this very room that I'm speaking from right now and addressed the players, it was a Churchillian speech, and it swung those boys there and then.
That night, most of the boys signed with the ARL.
Without the Johns brothers, without Paul Harrigan, the News Limited didn't have the Knights. It blew them out of the water.
Super League had lost the battle for the Knights. It was determined not to lose the war.
News Limited thought, well, we haven't got the Knights, we'll set up our own team with what became known as the Hunter Mariners.
I couldn't believe it. My first impression was, mate, this town's not big enough. And then I got told that basically News Limited just want to squash you blokes into the ground, and that's why the team's here, and that's what they're going to do. And I've got to say, that sent a bit of a shiver up my back.
The reason I signed with the Super League franchise in Newcastle was obviously to play football in Newcastle. Guaranteed to be a licence in town, and didn't want to pack up and move. So it was the start of my career.
The people in Newcastle, what it did is it fired them up. And it made a cocktail that was explosive at times.
Furious at Murdoch's Mariner invasion, a group called Aussies for the ARL emerged, led by the formidable Barbara Davis.
I think the Super League thing just hit so hard because of the loyalty of the people here. They couldn't believe that all of a sudden someone was going to own the game.
The Aussies for ARL was a big thing in the community, and it got a lot of people mentally, or did think that the Knights and the ARL was the only way to go, and they just closed their eyes down to the whole concept of the Super League.
The Hunter Mariners were despised, probably the most unpopular team in the history of rugby league.
Sisney getting close, he's in!
It was a little bit like a civil war, I suppose, in one sense, where it was a whole town of a working class town uprising against a huge organisation.
The whole thing became so nasty. You had some of the Mariners executives that had to get around with bodyguards to get around town because of death threats.
Blokes had to walk around with bodyguards that were involved with different teams. It was threats. It was the whole box and dice. It was a town ripped apart.
A lot of our kids suffered a lot, being spat on in the street, for instance.
I did have a death threat against my 13-year-old daughter.
Our offices got vandalised, so it was obviously everyone showing their allegiance to the Knights and certainly very anti-Hunter Mariners.
It was real nasty there for a while for not necessarily the players, but for the officials who went to the Super League side. And a lot of things were said and done, and Yeah, I might have been a part of that, which I regret now.
The Mariners take the field.
Despite their pariah status, the Mariners found success on the playing field.
The battle begins for the World Club Challenge.
The Hunter Mariners played in the World Club Challenge final.
I think we hugely overachieved, yeah. We were misfits thrown together from everywhere. We were against the whole community that didn't want us, and we played really well.
Come on, he close.
They could have won the World Club Challenge and no one in Newcastle would have given us stuff.
While the Mariners' World Club Challenge heroics went almost unnoticed, on the other side of town, the Knights made it all the way to the ARL Grand Final and won.
I don't think he could have written a script better than this 97 Grand Final.
What made the Grand Final so special for everyone in Newcastle and the Hunter was it had been such a tumultuous, tough year with the Super League wall, and out of all that, to win the Grand Final and for the war to be over, it was a great time.
It was a moment that convinced the powers that be on both sides of the fence during the Super League war that the game had to come back together. It's still seen as the game that saved the game.
While Newcastle partied, the writing was on the wall for both sides of the Super League divide.
The issue that made both parties stand up and say, hey, look, we've got to play the game and we've just got to stop the fighting.
Having a united game again had to come as soon as possible.
ARL and Super League, arch enemies for so long, will next year work as one.
The fans demanded, and above all, the game demanded that there be one competition.
The term of Super League is now dead and buried.
Trevor Gilmeister leads the South Queensland Crushers.
Super League peace was now a reality, but it came at a price.
Has it again, he puts on a little skip and away he goes.
First to go were the South Queensland Crushers, the Western Reds and the badly bruised Mariners.
Dykes giving chase, he won't get there.
There were surplus teams on both sides, and when it came down to which team was going to survive into the National Rugby League of 1998 onwards, in Newcastle there was no question it was going to be the Knights.
The NRL announced tough criteria that would see 4 more teams culled by the year 2000.
It was all based on the ability of the club to be able to finance its way ahead.
The clubs were put on notice that mergers would be encouraged, that there was no wish to see anybody ultimately excluded, but that if that had to happen against an objective criteria, then it would be carried through.
The NRL criteria pitted club against club in a battle for financial fitness. By the end of 1998, the Gold Coast Chargers and the Super League created Adelaide Rams had been put to the sword. For many, it was a case of merge or die.
The first teams to merge were Illawarra, who were facing financial difficulties, merged with St George Dragons.
I don't think the St George Illawarra merger was as painful as some of the others.
Each had what the other wanted. St George had money and no juniors. Illawarra had juniors and no money.
In its first year, the merged team defied the odds. A grand final appearance with another new team, News Limited's Melbourne Storm.
Melbourne has won it! Melbourne has won the grand final!
Soon the urge to merge was catching. But for Sydney's oldest clubs, it was a painful process.
It seemed likely that both Balmain and West wouldn't make the 14-team cut by standing alone. It seemed apparent that West were going to merge with Canterbury, Balmain were going to merge with Parramatta.
If we'd have merged with Parramatta, that wouldn't have been a merger, that would have been a takeover.
One suggestion was merging with Canterbury. They, I think, would have swamped the identity of Western Suburbs.
Eventually, 2 vulnerable foundation clubs found each other.
Well, we were adjoining boundaries. We were both foundation clubs. We were both battlers, and we felt that our supporters would get on together.
There could always be a whole lot more black and white when it comes to the merger of any team, and we would love to see a big magpie on the front of our jerseys. It's not the best outcome, but it's better than being gone altogether.
West are still a second-class citizen, I believe. Everybody calls West's Tigers the Tigers. They drop off the West.
It left people angry, bitter, and I still know some people that just refuse to accept it.
I opposed the merger very strongly because I didn't want to change the tradition.
Black and gold will never die. Black and gold forever.
And here comes North Sydney.
Meanwhile, the North Sydney Bears saw salvation on the Central Coast.
The basic reason that Norths missed out on becoming a standalone club was that it rained at Gosford.
The Bears claim they have only short-term financial problems. Wet weather has delayed the building of North Central Coast Stadium.
North Sydney were nomadic during that year and had no home ground.
Almost all of their games were away games, and so consequently their crowds, both home and away crowds, were very poor.
It put the club into financial difficulty. By the end of the season, they were pretty much bankrupt and insolvent, and their only means of survival was to take a merger with Manly.
Kelly gives his pass on to Lima.
A loveless marriage of two fierce rivals. The Northern Eagles was the merger from hell.
Not only were Norths our arch rival and they sucked and we didn't want anything to do with them because they were over the wrong side of the Spit Bridge, but they were the wrong colours.
To put Manly and North Sydney together would have been like trying to put two extreme bikie groups together.
The alliance between Manly and North Sydney, I think, was destined to failure from the start.
Manly did everything in their power to destroy that relationship and force Norths out and become a standalone club.
I'm really upset to see North Sydney out of the competition. They're one of the traditional teams of rugby league, and if I was still chairman of the league, as far as I'm concerned, they'd still be in there.
North Sydney weren't given a thought. That was just off with their heads and off they go. And I often wonder how North Sydney supporters have ever got over it.
On the eve of the new millennium came rugby league's greatest shock.
It was South Sydney who came outside the 14 teams.
The first victim of the NRL's dreaded criteria.
I couldn't believe that a side that had won more premierships in first grade and second grade than any other club can be kicked out of a competition.
South Sydney felt that the game belonged to the people and no one had the right to exclude anyone, no one had the right to make a club move from its traditional area, and no one had the right to tell a club to merge.
Coleman got it back to Chisholm, reaches out and scores. South straight back.
When you take a team like Souths out of a competition to suit a TV schedule, what you do is you cut into the lives of thousands and thousands of people.
When Souths weren't in the competition, it just felt like I lost my father again. You know, it was just a big part of my life.
Tradition and links with tradition and links with your own culture are part of life's richness, and that's what some of these guys just don't get.
The Rabbitohs removal shook rugby league to its core.
By the time the march left South's Redfern club, it was more than 50,000 strong.
South Sydney's expulsion galvanised fans. And they weren't just Rabbitohs supporters.
We're coming for you, Murdoch! We're coming for you! And you and me are going to get it on!
South Sydney were the first people to be voted off the island, and they weren't going to cop it.
I thought we were gone, and I really thought about my career being not relayed to my grandkids.
People power and a federal court win saw the Bunnies bounce back in 2002.
I felt it was a victory for the people.
We're back!
I felt it was a victory for ordinary fans of rugby league.
The Rabbitohs' return saw tradition make a comeback, and fans could no longer be ignored.
The lesson was that the impact of excluding a club with so much tradition can have an earthquake effect across the competition.
Meanwhile, taxes and smoking bans meant the end of the pokies jackpot. Clubs looked to privatisation as the key to the future.
A little dab over the top, looking for Kurt! Kurt leaps! Kurt scores! The Titans, they are back as the 16th team in the National Rugby League.
In 2007, the Gold Coast returned to the league.
This is the first try coming up. They're over the line. Pretty Walker.
Privately owned, the Titans see a future in people, not just profits.
Being privately held doesn't necessarily mean that you just
suffer for private interests. It's also about being community-driven.
Get the team into the community and the community will get into the team. And I guess our newest team, the Titans, are a great example of that.
The club has embraced the people up there as much as the people have embraced the club, and that's been one of their real marketing points.
It's a strategy that injects players into the community.
As a community ambassador for the Titans, it's really good because Titans are such a community-based club. They're willing to help out the less fortunate, and to be a part of that for me is a big deal, especially working with kids. They've got programs where they can learn about life and learn about being healthy.
Back in the big city, an awkward merger paid unexpected dividends.
The West Tigers, 2005 premiers.
I'd like to think that assisted maybe some Balmain and West's people who were sceptical about the merger.
It was a victory for the origins of the game. It was a victory for the working class. It was a victory for those who just turned up week after week.
After the biggest crisis in 100 years, today's clubs see the values of the past as a key to the future.
Well, tradition is important to almost every good human institution. And tradition is very important to rugby league because it's part of rugby league's identity.
Tradition is extremely important to any outfit that wants to survive, that really makes a game like league as strong as it is, and hopefully will keep it strong into the next century.
Without tradition, you don't have a football club, so it's really important to not only maintain the tradition, but educate everybody about it. The fans are the ones that maintain the tradition.
What spirit! What courage!
In rugby league's centenary year, club and community pride is finding new life.
This is not business you're talking about, so people don't use the same rationale in business as they use in sport. If they did, they'd be out of sport. Sport's about passion, you know. It's about loving your club, and I'll do anything I can to keep that.